Hello chess friends and welcome to Zardo's chess channel and welcome to my Nimzo-Indian defense series. So in this series we are covering a very nice and effective weapon while playing against the d4. So in this series I am trying to cover all of these possible lines that can happen to you while playing as black. So playing as black is always annoying when you don't have good preparation, so in this series I'm going to help you out. As I said, this is video number 5, but an introduction video, it's even video number 6. So before this video I think you should watch first of all my first videos that I've created in this series, because then you have a better understanding of this particular video. So you have to watch them combined, because you, as I said, want to have all of these lines covered, all of these possible sidelines that can happen to you, because then you really have a good opening as black. So let's, again, I always like to repeat myself in this series, because repetition, they say, is the mother of learning. So that's why first of all we should realize these important principles of the Nimzo-Indian defense. So as I said, first we have in some occasions this game bishop versus knight. We like this static and blocked positions while playing the Nimzo-Indian defense. We sometimes have to battle against the bishop. It means that we should sometimes probably build sort of a fortress against this white dark square bishop, but it was more explained in my previous videos, so check it out in order to get a better understanding what I'm talking about here in this video. So battling against central pawn storms, in some occasions when we trade off maybe our dark square bishop against the knight, white will have this slightly disadvantage of having these double pawns, but he will have a good central control with his pawns. We are basically battling against a central pawn storm. That's why we should try to block it out sometimes. Positional trades of pieces, it means when we sometimes give up the dark square bishop for a knight in the Nimzo-Indian, we should then after that go for the light square bishop, maybe trade off the light square bishop. Then your opponent is continuing the game with a weak dark square bishop against your very powerful knight, which can always change the direction of the attack in the middle game. And also you should be familiar with these elements of the blockade. The elements of the blockade are really one of the most important thing while playing the Nimzo-Indian. The blockade means we should really try to have central staticity of pawns. So it's really important to not create this dynamic position, because the bishops love dynamic positions. So that's why we should try to create static position in the center. So going into favorable endgames, when we manage to double up our opponent's pawns, then you should go maybe into a fast endgame, because then you have a much healthier pawn structure. So that's why you should sometimes force your opponent to go into an endgame game. So exploiting weaknesses, as said, when we sometimes also give up our dark square bishop for a knight, then you should go after these double pawns, because these double pawns are the main weaknesses in your opponent's position. But as I said, this was much more explained in my previous videos. Today we're continuing this Nimzo-Indian defense with this so-called normal line. So let's go back again. Let's see the Nimzo-Indian defense. So d4, knight on f6, c4, and now e6. After knight on c3, we have now the bishop on b4. So in my previous videos I've covered already the queen on c2, queen on b3, and similar ideas. Today we're continuing with the so-called normal line with e3. What I'm not recommending you to is to trade off this bishop immediately for the knight. So after b takes c3, you see this bishop on b4 wasn't challenged. If your opponent after castling plays a3, then I recommend you to play the move bishop on c3. Then after b takes c3, you see this bishop is blocked out by its own pawn. So this would be a long-term weakness for the dark square bishop, because then we should also go after the c4 or this c3 weakness. So you see, it's a huge difference immediately to take this knight on c3, or to wait your opponent to play the move a3 first and then to take it. So these are the tiny little things that you have to take care of while playing an opening, waiting here. And as I said, what you shouldn't do is to immediately take this knight on c3. White's idea, on the other hand, in this particular opening is while playing this e3 move, he'll try, after castling, this knight on e2 idea. So if we play something like, I don't know, b6, then if he kicks away your bishop, then again, I'm not recommending you to take the knight on c3. This is now a whole different story than the other lines that I've explained you here in my Nimzo-Indian defense series, because he can recapture with the knight on c3. Although it's also a good line, but I'm recommending you something else in this series, and if you want to follow it and apply this instance, I hope you can get a very nice opening. So as said, in this particular opening line, in this normal variation, we will rarely take out this knight on c3. So we'll play another line. So after knight on e2, we have now the d5 move. So you see, we're using now this particular moment because white has sort of a well, not a good coordination of knights here. The knights are aiming on each other. White would love, of course, to have this knight on f3, which is a more natural square for the knight. But here, after knight from g to e2, these knights are basically paralyzed a little bit. At least you can slow down white's development, and that's why here, in an early stage of the game, you have equalized the position. I'm not saying, as I always like to say, I'm not saying that you win this game, all of your games, because you're applying my systems, but the idea while playing as black is to equalize the game in an early stage of the game, and I think you have managed to do that. So the first instructive game in this particular line, so after this move d5, you see we have challenged our opponent's center immediately, is a game played by Hikaru Nakamura against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is playing this opening very well, I think, and here he played the move d5. We have a3, we have bishop on e7. You see, we are not taking the knight on c3 because your opponent can recapture the knight on c3, and then he'll continue the game with the bishop pair without this double pawns, without weaknesses, and then your opponent would really have a long-term advantage. So here c takes d5 was played by Nakamura. We have e takes d5, and now knight on f4. You see, white has to do something with the knight because he wants to liberate finally this diagonal for the bishop, because white wants, of course, also to castle with bishop on e2, then castling. And now we can play simply c6, simply fixing the pawn. Now we have sort of a static position, static center setup. Our main idea is to create outposts here, maybe on e4. From the other hand, white will try maybe something like knight on d3 and outpost on e5. So here bishop on d3 was played, knight on a6, also a very nice idea. You can do it sometimes because after bishop on a6 we have b takes a6, and now rook on b8 would be the idea, aiming against this weak b2 pawn. So that's why Nakamura castled, and now we have a very nice square for the knight on c7, and you see we have now the knights on good squares. The knights are controlling the center. The bishop still has a good diagonal, and what the most important thing about this opening is that we have now also a very good diagonal for the light square bishop. So in some occasions, when you play the setup c6 d5, you don't have good opportunities to play with the light square bishop, but that's not the case here. Here you have a good coordination of the pieces, and I so hope you realize that this is really an equalized game. So okay, as I said, you cannot win all of your games, and you probably won't do that, but here it's really an equalized game in an early stage of the game. We are now in move 10. So let's see the continuation. Queen on c2 by Nakamura. We have bishop on d6 with the preparation to take out the knight, maybe even to double out pawns, again with the same idea, to give up maybe our bishop pair, but to create some weaknesses in your opponent's position. And here f3 played by Nakamura. We have a rook on e8. Also a very powerful move, because this e3 pawn is the main weakness in the continuation. Knight on e2 was played, and now queen on e7. We have now developed all of our pieces. Basically what we want to do is only to develop maybe our light square bishop somewhere. Knight on g3, we have c5. You see Carlsen is cracking the position here, this weak pawn structure of e3 and d4. Queen on f2 was played, now b6, fixing the pawn on c5, and now with the preparation to play bishop on b7. But in some occasions you can also try bishop on a6. you see, because this bishop is very powerful. It has a good diagonal, so in some occasions you can also try to trade it off, because the knight is of course covering this a6. Bishop on d2 was played. We have a g6 by Carlsen, we have d takes c5, and now b takes c5. Now Magnus has accomplished this very flexible pawn structure in the center. We have now the so-called hanging pawns in the center, so take care of these pawns. When you have this pawns connected, you don't want to lose any of them. And now you see we have a b file again opened. We have the possibility to place the bishop on a very nice diagonal. Rook from f to e1 was played, and now rook on b8. As I said, that's why here b4 was played by Nakamura, but now c4. We have now advanced pawn. You see how flexible this pawn structure of c5 and d5 is, so it creates really annoying threats here. Bishop on f1, and now bishop on e5, very nice attacking the rook. Rook on d1 was played, a5, cracking the position, because here white has the advantage. Of course, you cannot take, pardon me, you cannot take here this pawn immediately, because you lose this pawn, and then this a5 would be a long-term weakness. So that's why here e4 was played by Nakamura. He wants also to get rid of this very advanced pawn here on c4, because this e5 pawn is the main protector of the c4. So here we have a takes b4, we have a takes b4, and now c3, getting a tempo. We have bishop on c1, and now we have d takes e4, knight takes on e4, and knight takes on e4. And as I always like to say here in my series, I'm not going to show you these games through this tactical point, to these tactical possibilities. I just want you to show you these positional ideas of these particular lines here. After rook takes on e4, we have bishop on f5. You see Carlsen is simply creating attacking, and here c2 was played, and here after rook on d2 we have queen on b4, and in this position Nakamura even resigned. This pawn is too powerful. You see, we have also the preparation to take this knight, so in this position, as I said, Nakamura resigned. So let's see now another Carlsen's game against Ahmed Adley with the same idea here. Adley played d4, knight on f6, c4, e6, knight on c3, again bishop on b4, and again we have this e3 idea, castling. So you see, it's move 4. We have already castled, which is a very good thing. It's this fast development of this Nimzo-Indian. The Nimzo-Indian is really a good opening, because you get your king secured also in an early stage of the game. And again we have this knight from g2, e2 idea. So again d5, as I mentioned, this is the setup that I would love for you to memorize it. This is our main concept of this normal line. Here a3 was played. Again Carlsen plays bishop on e7. We have c takes d, e takes d5, and now g3. You see here white doesn't try this knight on f4 idea to liberate the bishop, so one of the ideas can be also to develop the bishop through the square g2, but it's not a problem. Again, we're playing rook on e8, very important move, because this square is the main weakness in white's position, although it's covered with the bishop here after bishop on g2, but we are not allowing white to advance this pawn. This will be probably the main idea of white, maybe even with some preparations to play f3 and then e4 to get a huge central control with the pawns, to get some kind of a pawn storm in the center. So that's why here a5 was played, trying also to create a blockade against the potential b4 move. But you see, these moves, you can really try many moves now, because you have played a natural opening, you have played on a very solid opening, and you have really a fixed position here, as I said, and you have also equalized the position as black in an early stage of the game. Castling, now knight on a6, again this knight on a6 idea, now with c6, and then now knight on c7. This is also set up that you should memorize while playing the Nimzo-Indian. Knight on f4, you see c6 we have, and now b3, knight on c7, rook on a2, bishop on d6, again attacking the knight. We have again this f3. The preparation is to play, of course, the move e4, and whenever that happens, you should try this c5 move. Of course, you see, when white takes, if white takes, d takes c5, then bishop on c5, and this would be really a weakness that we can hang on to it. This will be white's main problem in the continuation of the game. So that's why knight on e2 was played. Again, Carlsen is playing b6, fixing the position first. Also now again with the preparation to play something like bishop on a6, g4, we have bishop on a6, we have rook on f2, and now again advancing the pawn, using again this pawn majority. Here we have 3-on-2 situation. We want to create some kind of a pass pawn here. B takes c4, bishop takes on c4, rook on a1, and now you see b5. This is now a very powerful position. I'm not going to show you the whole game. I'm gonna send you all of the PGNs of the games that I used in this video in the description below. You can analyze this, but this is really a good position here for black. So let's see now another example. Here d4, knight on f6, c4, e6, knight on c3, bishop on b4, and again e3, castling, knight from g2, e2, and now d5. Here we have again c takes d5, e takes d5, g3, again c6, bishop on g2, rook on e8. So again we have the same setup, and the game that I wanted to show you, it was played by Alexander Cherepkov here with the black pieces against Krzysztof Pittel. This game will also be in the description below. We have casting. Now again this knight on a6 idea. Again, I want you to memorize this types of move order. We have h3, not a problem, a positional move here by white. Again, knight on c7, we have g4, and now bishop on d6. You see, black's idea was simply to slow down a little bit white's development because of this not so good coordination of this knight. Now the bishop had his fun on the queen side, and now black simply redirects it here on the king side. Now the bishop has a very powerful diagonal here on the king side. So you see, in this particular line, in this normal line, we are not giving up the dark square bishop, which is very important in this particular line. Here we have f4, but now simple h6, preventing some g5 ideas. And again, we can also try something like knight on e4 to cement the knight, to get use of this weak square that white has built here. So that's why here knight on g3 supporting more this e4. We have a5 by white, and now queen on f3. It seems now that white has a perfect development here, but now simple knight on h7, getting out of this potential g5 move, because if g5, then we can takes, and here we would then have an attack against the queen, but also we would have a protection against this f2 pawn. Bishop on d2 was played. You see, again, white has the problems with the dark square bishop in this setup. Meanwhile, I hope you realize these bishops are perfectly fine. So here a4, getting use of the space advantage that we have created on the queen side. Rook on f2, a3, b3, and now very important, knight on e6. This knight is one of the best pieces now that we have on the board. Queen on d1, rook on d1, and now very nice move, knight on g5. If you take, then we can attack the queen. The queen has to retreat, and then we would grab this knight on g3. So that's why queen on e2 was played. Here we have knight on f4, and here after e takes f4, we can take the queen. And again, I'm not going to show you the whole game here. I hope you realize white is basically lost, although white has the rook and the knight for the queen, but I hope you realize that white is really lost. Black has a completely winning game here. So I hope you realize these ideas. Meanwhile, you can watch my previous videos from my Nimzo-Indian series, and you can also watch my King's Indian series if you want to see a more aggressive way how to play against d4. I have created over more than 45 videos in the King's Indian defense, so you can also check it out. And you can also watch my Hyper Accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series if you have troubles while playing against e4. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and just the best, of course.